sophomore by year because it's my second year, but I'm a junior because I graduate next year, but I'm senior by credit.
Everybody, I'm Justin. I'm in the sociology department too, and I'm only a junior.
So thank you. So before I call up Marissa, Dylan, Justin to kind of present our report card findings, and wanted to kind of give you kind of a little bit of background about the report card. So we've been working with the Beautiful Safe Place for Youth Partners for the last year and a half, and then last fall we started working with RBAC, and they wanted us to do some studies on community engagement, which we were really amazing. We went and surveyed a lot of residents in the neighborhood about the level of what they do for community engagement, what really motivates them, what are some of their sort of beliefs about their neighbors, if they socialize with their neighbors. We learned a lot, and one of the things we learned was that people really have positive feelings about their neighborhood, but they notice some positive changes that are happening, but they're not aware of all of them, right? Especially the ones that all of our back has been working on and their partners. And so part of the what we've heard back from RBAC is figuring out how to make it more visible, how to make these changes more visible, more in the daily life of everyday residents. And one of the ideas was to do this report card, sort of. And we'll talk about a little bit of report card, but I thought it was a really good idea, and it's sort of a mini way to move the research we've been doing into something also more applied. So we're also trying to figure out how to apply our applied research, right, even a little bit more. So we were able to incorporate some of the findings from our past research and use it for this report card, and then hopefully that will really be a project that will really go out to the neighborhood and communicate all the positive things that are happening in the neighborhood, but also highlight those areas that still need improvement, right? So without further ado, I'll invite Marissa, Dylan, and Justin to present our findings. So let me help you with that.
Let's give them some appreciation for that.
So what they'll do is they'll go through their presentation, and then we'll invite the rest of the students up for Q&A and discussion.
All right, so hello. We are, like we said, students from the University of Washington, and today we're going to talk all about the Rainier Beach Neighborhood Report Card Phase 1.
So, what is a report card? A report card is an instrument for summarizing, reporting, and identifying areas and the improvement within the neighborhood. Similar to school report cards, they help identify problem areas and collect data on progress being made within the neighborhood. In conclusion, report cards does direct calls to action with the residents of the neighborhood and anyone else looking to get involved. But why Rainier Beach? This report card doesn't only focus on crime. Rainier Beach just has its fair share of problems, as with any other American neighborhood. This report card for Rainier Beach seeks to construct and fortify social connections amongst the residents, and also increase and strengthen existing social attitudes about the neighborhood. This report card will ultimately capture the extent to which Rainier Beach has experienced change throughout recent years.
So this is Rainier Beach. Rainier Beach is a neighborhood in South Seattle that is particularly culturally, racially, and ethnically diverse. It's bordered by Othello in the north, MLK in the west, and south is Kubota Gardens. It has good levels of resident engagement, which is a good thing, and there have been many positive changes made to Rainier Beach over the course of the last few years. There's been like the food hub, the establishment of community centers, safe passage program, and there have been a lot of non-arrest interventions to kind of decrease crime. Residents, like Minchie mentioned, have noticed many of these changes, but not all of them. Hopefully, this presentation, this report card, will be able to illuminate some of those changes.
So in order to create our report card, we kind of wanted to start with a framework, kind of a model we could use to help us understand how we could emphasize neighborhood health and safety. So we took a look at this Thrive model. As you can see, it's this Venn diagram, and it was created by the Prevention Institution. It contains 3 different parts: people, place, and equitable opportunity. The idea behind the model, as with most public health measures and neighborhood health and whatnot, is that it's holistic and comprehensive. It's not that health is related to an absence of disease or an absence of bad things happening. It's rather the ability and the presence of people being able to thrive and have a positive well-being. So we really wanted to find a model like this that could help us meet that holistic goal that we had in mind. So for the phase 1 focus, we decided to focus on the place factor, so health, safety, and place. And then we ended up focusing on 5 individual factors: look, feel, safety, parks and open spaces, and then getting around. And based on those indicators, we were able to come out with individual measures for each indicator, which we'll explain a little bit later, create a score for each of the indicators, and then eventually a grade. To go in more depth about that particular methodology, we started by scoring Rainier Beach to a comparison group. The comparison group would either be the City of Seattle average, a control site that was also found in South Seattle, the trend over time, so over 3 or 5 years, and then finally progress towards a goal or professional standard from like the Department of Parks and Recreation or some other organization. Step 2 involved totaling up the score that we gave and then dividing by the total possible score, which gave a percentage, kind of like in a regular report card. And then it was translated over to a letter grade, C being the goal we would like to have or higher. And then based on that grading system, we were able to determine that Rainier Beach got a score of 69%, which is a B, which is very good.
All right, Rainier Beach.
Yeah. And so it broke down into the different indicators, and as you can see, we have quite a bit of B's. We have an A, and then we have 1 C. And so we're going to go into a little bit more depth about how these grades were created and what factors we looked into.
So the first place-based factor that we looked at was look, and the look of a neighborhood is extremely important. The aesthetic of the physical environment essentially kind of shapes the perceptions on safety. It also shapes the kind of interactions that residents will have with one another. And we measured that by 3 indicators, the first one being maintenance of public and open spaces, and we broke that down into 2 measures, which is the number of broken pieces of equipment and the amount of litter. And then the second indicator that we have is the number of vacant or dilapidated buildings. And these 2 measures are measures for poor quality. Our third measure is a measure for good quality. It's art and public spaces. Art in public spaces, rather. And what we found is that Rainier Beach has about the same amount of broken equipment as the control site that we measured it against. Rainier Beach does have significantly more litter than the control site and also has significantly more vacant or dilapidated buildings. But one of its strengths is that it has significantly more pieces of public art, and this should be looked at as one of the major assets in Rainier Beach. So areas of improvement can be maintenance of litter and the use of vacant or dilapidated buildings.
So for our next indicator, we took a look at feel, and so we really wanted to know how people perceived their safety and their neighborhood health in general. So we went through the process of choosing these 6 indicators. The first 2 regard a direct safety question about whether people feel safe in the day and whether people feel safe in the night. The next 2 questions, people care about the community, people are willing to help out, are more of an indirect safety question that asks about social cohesion, whether or not people feel like other people are willing to help them with regards to safety. And then the last 2 questions are about place attachment and whether or not you feel home and safe at home. So after looking at those indicators, we found that Rainier Beach and the control site, although not exactly the same, they had very similar percentages. So we gave a score for all the different indicators and ended up with a 60%. We kind of wanted to look into the similarities, so we did a statistical as well as a substantive review of the questions we had, and during that we found a really interesting kind of thing about the safety in the day and safety in the night questions. The safety in the day question was pretty comparable, like the 87%, 82% was pretty comparable to the rest of the United States. So people in the day in Rainier Beach and the control site do feel about the same amount of safety as other places in the United States. However, at night, we have 43 and 49%, but in other parts of the United States, we found a lot of people felt safe around the percentages of like 60% and above. So because of that, we wanted to note the importance of like emphasizing night safety, not just in Rainier Beach, but in South Seattle in general. And so that's kind of what we learned about from this feel indicator.
And now, move on to safety. We chose safety as one of our choice factors, primarily because the safer a neighborhood actually is, the safer its residents will feel within the neighborhood. In other words, a safer neighborhood corresponds to fewer crimes and injuries, and thus eventually results in greater cohesion, trust, and growth amongst the residents. To measure safety, we selected 4 indicators. The first being the obvious person property crime per 10,000 population over a 5-year trend from 2011 to 2015. Second, we took the estimated progress that had been made towards the 2014 SEPTED recommendations, which suggested that the neighborhood improve its lighting and visibility availability in the 5 Rainier Beach hotspots. And the last two measures for safety regard the youth, primarily the youth, particularly their school climate, including safety, and the proficiency/graduation rates. We feel that if the pathway to a school is safe, school children are more likely to want to attend and will attend. And within the schools themselves, if the schools are safe, school children are more likely to perform and graduate at higher rates. Now, this is the first slide of our findings, and keep in mind there are quite a few categories up here, but we decided this would be the case primarily because safety is such an over-encompassing factor that we decided it would be necessary to include all of these measures and more to probably demonstrate and illustrate the extent to which Rainier Beach has and is improving. First, we have our crime rates person crime rates and property crime rates per 10,000 people, and the trends. Overall, everything is either stabilizing or improving. SEPTED progress has reached around 42% for Rainier Beach since 2014, and compared to the goal of the eventual 100%, it receives a score of 3. And lastly on this slide, we have the crime rate for the middle schools and the high schools in Rainier Beach. And all except the South Lake High School have received a score of 3, as the South Lake High School compared to its control received a score of 1. And on this slide, we have the remaining measures, which are the middle school proficiency rates and the graduation rates for high schools, for the high schools throughout the area. All indicators except for the middle school proficiency rates received a 3 or above. The middle school, of course, received a 1 compared to the goal, the control, and the goal. And in summation, Rainier Beach received a percentage of 67%, which is very good for its safety factor. And these are 3 graphs which help visualize the change Rainier Beach has experienced, both over trends of time for its proficiency graduation rates and its climate question responses, and when compared to Seattle in terms of the crime trends. School crime rates are stabilizing, but they still remain low.
So for our next indicator, we looked at parks and open spaces, and this was actually one of the best indicators we found. We ended up, Rainier Beach ended up with 100% or an A. We chose this because we believe it's important with regards to safety to have a safe place to play, a safe place to refresh your mind, and just a safe place to socialize with your community so you can build those social bonds and foster that sense of community. So we looked at 3 different indicators: 1 acres of parkland per 1,000 residents, percent of residents within half a mile to a quarter mile of park, and then finally percent of residents within a mile of a community center. The first 2 indicators focus more on outdoor space and kind of how close you are to park, how much green space you have, The last indicator we chose because being we are from the Pacific Northwest, it rains a majority of the year. So it is important for us to have an indoor space that is safe, that we can be in and feel safe about that. So that's why we chose those three. And as you can see, we have our indicators here. If you compare it to the Seattle average, Rainier Beach has done outstanding and has outperformed on both accounts. And then in the far right column, we have the score based on the comparison to the Department of Parks and Recreation development goals that they created, I believe, in 2011. And so far, Rainier Beach has also outperformed on all accounts, which is really wonderful. So they rightfully deserve 100%.
The next place-based factor we looked at was getting around. Getting around in transportation is extremely important because the transportation quality and access kind of dictates how much geographic space residents have access to and how many resources then they have access to, which improves community health. The indicators that we looked at were the percentage of households without vehicles, the walk score, which is a bunch of different measurements in and of itself, but mostly proximity. The percentage of roadways with complete sidewalks, kind of more of a measurement of accessibility. And then the transit score and the bike score. And we picked those indicators because they kind of give a good view of commonly used everyday forms of transportation for residents. And what we ended up finding was that first, the number or the percent of zero vehicle households has been decreasing consistently in Rainier Beach, which we saw as a good thing. More households have access to cars and more forms of transportation for getting around. The walk score was lower than the Seattle average, and but the percentage of roadways with complete sidewalks was higher than the Seattle average, so that's good. The transit score and bike score were similar to the Seattle average.
And again, overall, Rainier Beach received a score of 69%, which equates to a B, which is very good. One problem factor, or one factor that would need prioritizing, would be the look factor, which received a score of 50% or a C. And surprisingly, Parks and Open Spaces did outperform Seattle, and thus received in 100%, which is an A.
So as with all studies and any sort of project, it's always important to look at your strengths and limitations to see how it might have helped or hindered the project. So we decided to kind of take a moment to look at the strengths and limitations we had. For strengths, we used a lot of different data. We used a lot of different sources. We used census data, Beautiful Safe Place for Youth data. We did a lot of observations. We went out and surveyed people, and we really made sure to be all-encompassing and, again, holistic about how we collected our data. We also used a very strict criteria for selecting the indicators. We were very thoughtful about our process, and we tried to make sure we had good reasoning and made sure it connected back to neighborhood health and safety. We also, again, looked at statistical and substantive differences when scoring because we really wanted to make sure the differences that we saw, were they actually different, or was it maybe just they're so close that it doesn't really, it's not as different as we would think. And so we really made sure to look into that. And finally, again, going back to the Thrive model, we tried to use a holistic and comprehensive approach that really encompassed all aspects of neighborhood health and safety. With regards to limitations, we did use some older data. Data was no more than 5 years old, but if it was older data, we did make sure it was something that wouldn't change a lot, like parks or something that's a little bit more stable. If it was data that did change a lot, so data on feelings, we tried to use like surveying in the past 3 months or like data from a couple months ago. We did do some primary data collection, observations and surveys and whatnot. We did have a fairly small sample size and didn't get to do as many observation visits to the various sites. That primarily had to do with the time crunch we had since we only had 3 months. In addition, there was some variation with the Rainier Beach neighborhood boundaries. Everybody kind of has a different idea of where the neighborhood is, so we made sure to like kind of agree where to go, make sure we had a block radius from where we were going off the street, and so that's how we kind of tried to minimize our limitations effects.
So upon reviewing our recommendations for each place-based factor, we kind of found 3 themes. The first theme being promoting Rainier Beach's unique identity. And so we kind of looked at public art and parks and open spaces as huge assets for Rainier Beach, and we completely recommend utilizing those assets. So what we recommend doing is promoting accessible sidewalks and walking routes through those parks and open spaces and to and between the art sculptures. And in that way, it promotes exercise, which is of course beneficial to public health. It also promotes community interaction, which is a great thing, and the community will be able to interact with those art sculptures and kind of interact with their own culture and other cultures. So this is a very good thing.
The next thematic recommendation we looked into was addressing feelings of safety. We kind of talked earlier about night safety and youth feeling safe at school. We also want to continue to prioritize the youth and their safety and also make progress on the subtype. We're well on the way, but obviously we still have time, so it's good to make progress towards that. It's also important to note that because feelings are obviously very personal, it can be really hard to change how someone feels about the neighborhood. So continuing to raise awareness of the positive changes, so the public art, the different community events, that's stuff that should really be promoted because it is so important, and hopefully that will change those feelings of safety, make people feel better.
Our last recommendation comes to managing perceptions of managing how Rainier Beach is perceived as a neighborhood. We came to this conclusion that this should be one of our recommendations because the look of how a neighborhood appears, how a neighborhood appears to both residents and passersby, impacts both the feel and safety of the neighborhood itself. And we suggest that Rainier Beach continue prioritizing the maintenance of its public and open spaces, and those would include parking lots, sidewalks, etc. We also recommend that Rainier Beach focuses on setting community norms and expectations on litter, particularly through community events. One instance of this would be the Bridge to Beach event, which is an annual gathering which incites the participation of the Rainier Beach residents to help clean up litter and other things around the neighborhood. And lastly, we advise that Rainier Beach continue to actively engage place managers with a focus on dilapidated buildings and homes in the pearls of Rainier Beach. And this is mainly so that the pearls in Rainier Beach can remain as pearls, and that eventually in the future other areas may fall into that category.
We'd like to acknowledge and thank the following groups and people for helping us out, and we want to let you know to definitely look out for Report Card Phase 2 at the end of summer 2016. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, and I invite the rest of the class to come up and answer questions, discuss anything you want to talk about. Not all at once. Barb?
How'd y'all go about choosing your control neighborhood? What was the control neighborhood?
Our control neighborhoods were the 5 sites that we used in Othello. I believe we got it from Lisa, I'm not sure.
The same ones.
Oh.
They told not to reveal.
Oh, okay.
All
Right,
all
that's supposed to be
Yeah.
secret.
I was just, yeah, I thought you had your own process. I
No,
wasn't sure.
So we, if you guys don't mind, so A Beautiful Safe Place for Youth has these confidential controls that are in South Seattle neighborhood, very similar to the hotspots in Rainier Beach, so we use the same ones. But we also use other controls, like Andrew, you want to talk about the schools?
Oh yeah, for the schools, we used mainly the schools within Rainier Beach, but for some we did have to reach out a little bit. For example, South Lake High School is an alternative school, and the data on the alternative schools were really different compared to the public schools such as Rainier Beach. So to find something comparable and also something that kind of fits the mission of South Lake, we used Middle College, which we were told not to say, but yeah. One of the control variables, as they had similar goals of what they're trying to accomplish, and not only that, the data showed that it was very comparable. Yeah.
What, if any, are the plans to use this data to improve Rainier Beach?
Gregory, do you want to answer?
Sure. Yeah. They are the data gatherers, interpreters, and presenters. And similar to what were catalysts for initiatives like Rainier Beach, a Beautiful Safe Place, and like I would even go so far as to say the priority hire, and I want to give some acknowledgement to Vonetta Barton here, who's also with the University of Washington and Communities in Action, and so some things that spurred like that initiative. We have a strategist on board, her name is Patrice Thomas, and so she takes these concepts and then creates program ideas and recommend them to us. I can tell you personally, the one that I'm interested in is well, maybe I shouldn't tell you. Is it too late? Well, the notion of litter, and you know, I see the group downtown with the gold and blue jackets on, the Metropolitan, whatever they are, rolling their litter cans and wanting to create that as a program or initiative in the neighborhood. I think the other is the public arts. You do know, most of you know that as we speak, there's a installation being dedicated on Barton and 51st, Kings and Queens. Would love to do a walking public art installation tour in conjunction with Rainier Beach Merchants Association. So those are some.
Great
So I
ideas.
know that's a lot, but
Yeah, no, that's
sorry
great.
for the.
Exciting, thank you.
Marissa, can you go to the Thrive model? Just want to highlight for everybody. So, under the quarter system that we're in, like just 3 short months, the one more back. So the Thrive model has 12 factors. So we focus on the place, 5 factors in the place cluster. There's a people cluster and equitable opportunity cluster. So ideally, the whole report card for Rainier Beach will be measuring all these factors, all these clusters and these factors. We're phase 1 because they were only able to do 5. So Jeff on the front here, he's gonna do some more this summer, and then we'll kind of, you know, hopefully within this, in a very near future, finish this off and have a full report card for Rainier Beach.
I'm curious if you could just explain or unpack the idea of proficiency, which was one of the models in the educational or the school kind of category.
Yeah, so for the we did the middle school proficiency because, well, one, we wanted to find some kind of data on them kind of graduating or moving up, but there's nothing like that because middle schoolers don't really graduate. So we used the proficiency of 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. We took those averages, and then we used the data was available. They had 8th grade science, and that's what we kind of measured it on. And we found that even though throughout like the 5 years it has increased, it's still relatively low. Particularly 8th grade science, it was probably one of the lowest percentage scores. And yeah, and that's why we use that data. We use that data just because we think part of that kind of shows just the children, well not children, middle schoolers' willingness to come to school and feel safe at school, to learn, but not even in school, but outside of school, just even like walking to school or something like that, might prevent them from coming into school and getting the education. Yeah.
And that measure on like science scores was gathered from testing?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I've got a question that's more personal. So we've got the report card, we've got your findings, but on a personal level, what really surprised you about Rainier Beach? What was your personal experience?
I'd have to say personally the progress in art that Rainier Beach is actually progressing in. We actually didn't expect it to be that significant of a difference, but it was significant enough to improve the score. So
I think even just like walking through in the few times that we've been here, it's just the amount of art and like the amount of that and the public art in general was really surprising, just because we're from a new district. It's nothing like that. It's just a school, and that's what the main focus is. But to see that is really enlightening and shows a lot of like community participation, which I really love. So.
and even with our confidential control sites, you know, we walk around and we're observing and looking for things like art, and we don't see any. It's really surprising not seeing anything like that. A lot of them were around the light rail stations, you know, because they really focus on doing that. So yeah, it's like a huge ask for Rainier Beach, and I think it's really important for them to like really bring that to the front for the community.
Another thing is too is like the community engagement. I came from down south in Lake Washington, and there is absolutely no community engagement there. So when I first walked into like this project and got to talk to some people and also see how many like community like youth engagement programs there are, how many events there are within the neighborhood, it's really shocking to see for me personally as someone growing up with no neighborhood engagement. So I think that's one thing to really kind of like highlight and also kind of transcend into other neighborhoods too.
Can I follow up on that then? Since we're talking about art, then how did you think the art that is already existing in the neighborhood inform the identity of the neighborhood?
I'm sorry, how does it
Inform the identity. How did you feel that, you know, that particular art, because we're talking numbers, right? You were looking at a lot of it,
Sure, yeah.
but in terms of its actual quality and cultural quality probably, how does that represent the neighborhood? Because you mentioned identity as one of the, you know, things we need to bring forward. So how does art, as it stands today, support that?
So I think, well, not looking specifically into the details of each particular art piece and like how that, you know, it kind of reflects like a particular neighborhood. I think a lot more we were kind of geared towards the availability of the artwork and like the quantity of it, because I mean it's all beautiful and like art is beautiful in general, you know. But I don't think we really looked into specifically how this particular art pieces reflect the diversity and culture and like what this neighborhood has come to represent, unfortunately.
I think in the next phase we'll look at the next factor, which is there's an arts and cultural expression factor, because we wanted to kind of differentiate that. Like one is the public art. One of the things we wanted to prioritize was outdoor public art. It's free. It's, you know, accessible to all. It's not like you have to pay a ticket to get in and things like that. And we're not art majors or, you know, like, so it wasn't about like whether we liked it or not, but whether it was available. It's like accessibility to some sort of cultural expression. But I think in the next phase, we're gonna deal more with like art making, process of art making, how in, different forms of our cultural expression there are in the neighborhood. If people are engaged in art making and not just looking at it, but you know, making it, then that's sort of how we'll extend from that. Jimmy?
I guess in part you were out there in the neighborhood, et cetera, and you were enacting this Thrive model, I guess partly, you know, just from any sort of educational grading system or anything. Did you think of anything that you would like to add as a grading component for place? Or did you feel you captured it recently?
Well, we possibly could add housing. That was one of the original suggestions, but we just unfortunately didn't have the time to do it. But housing would capture the, would demonstrate how many people are not living on the streets, and as such, that would also have an effect on the safety of the people who do the streets.
I think also with regards to place, looking at built environment, so not necessarily the public art and like the aesthetics of it, but like the actual like buildings and the sidewalks and the way everything is laid out to see how that, because a lot of neighborhoods are very differently built, and I'd be really interested in seeing how that might affect how people feel about their neighborhood or their neighborhood health and safety.
I've personally spent a lot of time looking at the trend of zero vehicle households in comparison to the Seattle average, and it seems that the zero vehicle households are rapidly decreasing as opposed to Seattle, where they're very, very gradually increasing in zero vehicle households. And the way that we chose to interpret that was that there are more options for transportation, but that could just as easily mean, you know, several different things. It can be reflective of maybe like an inadequate public transportation system, or, you know, it's not the whole picture. So had we had more time to do something like this, I would have liked to look deeper into something like that.
That's a good point, because it had me thinking about how we loved our small carbon footprint, right? And so fewer cars suggest, you know, a smaller carbon footprint. Therefore, the neighborhood contributing to, you know, the positive environmental conditions. So the notion of that kind of going up is an interesting one from kind of the thinking that we have. And so I'm glad you mentioned that, because that was something I was thinking. And so that, I think that would be one of the contextual things to think about as a sociologist, you know, and as researchers, and that there is a, when we look at the data, that's what it is. Within there, it's a contextual piece. Just to kind of get a little bit at what I think David might have been hinting at is, when we look at the number of public installation pieces we have, are they similar, or are there themes, or are they just hodgepodges of this and that and the other? And what, as a neighborhood, do we have the ability to control that? So that's just another, and as I think about the next phase two, that's something to think about too.
In your phase two research, are you intending on looking at the impact of gentrification? In what way?
Oh, no, I wasn't answering. I'm just happy that you mentioned gentrification, because it's something that I personally noticed a lot in conducting, you know, the research that we conducted.
Sure. And for the young men that grew up here, you can attest to.
Yeah, no, I bounced all over the place. I was like in Georgetown, and I was in Columbia City for a little bit, and then I lived in South Park. And so, like, yeah, you get to see a lot of, you know, growing up, you get to see a lot of what each neighborhood is and like the kind of differences between them, and yeah, things like that.
In your interactions, like the community mapping piece, were there comments about that? Were there what people thought?
During the surveying, actually, when we asked a lot about like feelings of your neighborhood and feelings of safety, we did meet quite a few people that had a lot of interesting words to tell us about what's going on in the neighborhood. It varied a lot too. It really just depended on who you asked. So yeah, it was a little glimpse into that. So I hope Jeff can address that in phase two.
Well, I'd love at some point to see the survey instrument you used for the physical parents. I'd just like to see what you used. And then I have a question actually about the crime data. Did you use SPD public
Yes.
data? Oh,
Yes.
how'd you find that to work with?
It was quite easy to build. The police department does make their website quite accessible. Like you can filter which neighborhood you want and the years you want, and even the kind of crime.
And I think a beautiful safe place for you to use is a different data set. I mean, a modified data set. And
Yeah.
I checked with Charlotte about that, if it was the trends, the general trends would be similar, and she confirmed it would be similar, but you guys have a different criteria for choosing certain types of crimes. I think also you GIS code them too.
Yes.
Any last questions, comments? Okay.
It's very commendable, and your research is obviously very well thought out and comprehensive. And the nice part about what the findings are the solutions are very inexpensive relative to what you would imagine for a metropolitan neighborhood. And so that's very empowering for the community to respond to address these factors. I mean, it's easy to pick up litter, and there's a lot of artists in this community, so that's great that you actually quantify that the fixes don't necessarily have to cost millions of dollars and lots and lots of grants. So that's great. What a service to the community.
Great, thank you. Jerry?
I just want to make a statement from the Department of Sociology, just to thank our Rainier Beach partners in creating such a great opportunity for our students, because it's really it's a place that we're trying to build more and more, in the sense of opportunities to see what they learn as social scientists and how it's applicable to either communities or to the real world, if you will. And it's been a great, I think we've had at least 5 presentations here, or at least 4, where it's been a very nice opportunity for the students. So I appreciate that.
Thank you. One more?
Yeah.
So I don't know, I'm thinking about headlines, right?
Oh, yeah. You guys want to hear your headlines? You're
So-
hyping them homework. They have to do that.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Gregory.
Okay, well, to test your media communications inside person, I know you're all sociologists, and but one of the things that we always like, because we do have this social media effort, FreedomNet, if you had some headlines based on what you learned in terms of the neighborhood, what would your headlines be that we could steal?
No pressure. Yes, there's pressure, come on.
Yeah, there's a grade on there.
Well, is this like page 6 or page 1? Like where?
Well, when we first came up, actually, I really liked you told us when you were talking about the construction of the community center, and you said all is not as it seems, and I really like the way you phrased that, because that was applicable to a lot of things, whether there were negative aspects or positive aspects throughout this neighborhood, like buildings or like safety, when there's like a negative perception, I think, or a stigma about this community for many years that, it's a bad place, or it's a troubled neighborhood, and clearly it's not the case anymore. So I think that's what I would choose, and I'll quote you on that.
All is not as it seems. Okay.
And just to jump on that too, just like I said, I live down south in Lakewood, and just kind of that kind of perceived reputation of Rainier Beach traveled all the way down there. And so for someone going into this project, that's what I assumed. And so when you actually delve into the research, you see all of these things that aren't really the case. And so I think, yeah, definitely what Andy said definitely reflects how I think we all felt. I definitely it reflects when we do surveys. I think some of us really talked to the people we were serving, and they said the same thing. They have this reputation, but when we lived here and moved here, it's totally not the case. And so I think that definitely should be somewhat of the headline. Yeah.
Any more headlines? So they all were assigned to do a headline. It's due Sunday.
We're working on it.
Gregory.
All right.
Patrice?
I just want to say what you just said was really powerful. What you guys said throughout your entire presentation was extremely powerful. So thank you for this again. Coming off of town halls, coming off of the general work that we do from day to day, you guys have not ceased as of yet with your class to come in here and present something that either is in tow with what we thought we should be thinking or is in tow with what we are thinking, and so I'm appreciative for that. But to hear you say that the stereotype or what is Rainier Beach made it all the way down to Lakewood, that's really powerful, and so that means whatever positivity we're putting out there, ideally it's making it all the way down there as well. And so whatever the time frame, whatever whatever it may be, ideally we can circle back around and ask some folks all the way down in the south what they know about Rainier Beach, and it has been a positive thing. And so as far as a metric or a measurable, for me, that's what I'm going to hang on to. So thank you for that.
Great, so let's give them a last round of applause. Thank you for coming out on your Saturday, on a sunny day. We have some refreshments that hopefully all you can
Intro.
You wanna give a little intro to phase 2? Go ahead.
Yeah. Hi again. So my name is Jeff. I'm a senior in the sociology department as well, and so I was involved with the fall presentation. So we did the community engagement and collective efficacy study, and so for the summer, I heard what this group was doing, and I thought it was brilliant. So I heard that there's a potential for phase 2. So luckily, I was approved to do that as kind of independent research. So thank you. And I'll be finishing up the place factor, and I like to be really ambitious, so I might try to go for another factor, but we'll see. So there's housing is left, arts and culture expression, and then what's sold and how it's promoted. I think are the last 3. And air, soil, and water. Sorry. So
those are the last 3 under the place.
Under the place, yeah. So the goal is to finish place and then move into the other other 3 or the 2 facets. Yeah. So I'll this Friday, I think I have an assignment already to draft my proposal of what factors I'll be measuring. So.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
So you can have a seat. We just got a few more minutes. Thank you again. quickly, I wanted you to take a picture. First, let me say, for those of you who don't know, we're in Emoze City Bible Fellowship. It's also Urban Impact, so this is the building that we're in. And the activity that was happening was a men's fellowship. This happens to be my church, so no commercial. So I just wanted to thank the host for making the space available. I also want to take an opportunity real quick, since we've got a UW kind of vibe going, because we got Rainier here, and they've got work going on in the areas. To give you a minute to kind of share.
Thank you. I did wear purple. I didn't wear my purple glasses. I just wore a yellow skirt, and I thought, oh, it's not my show. Thank you. So, some of you might know, I've had the opportunity to meet some of you over the last couple of years. UW School of Social Work has a goal, specifically our dean, Eddie O'Hara, has a goal to focus on collective impact. And so one of the things that we are doing specifically focused on nonprofits in Southeast and Central Seattle, helping nonprofits come together to better serve children, youth, and families. And so many of the organizations who help launch this project that I'm managing are very much focused on family engagement and parent support. So we have been implementing the communities that care model, your traditional planning and getting organized and collecting data. So I have graduate students out of the School of Social Work that have looked at the Healthy Youth 2012 and 2014 Healthy Youth Survey. And then another cadre of students came in and identified some evidence-based programs that we want to implement. And speaking of appreciating urban impact and Emerald City Bible Fellowship, we've identified 3 programs that we want to implement over the course of 2 years, January of 2016 through 2017, and they're Guiding Good Choices, the Incredible Years, and Life Skills Training. And I have more information. I won't take time to tell you about that now, but Guiding Good Choices we offered and launched in April this past month at Emerald City Commons, thanks to Emerald City Bible Fellowship and Urban Impact, specifically Glenn McRae and Steve Burry, and of course Gregory's been a great supporter of our work. So I say all that to say that we are very excited about being able to do our work in partnership. So at Collective Impact, the University School Social Work is more the administrative arm. The students come and do quite a bit of work similar to what your group has done, where we collect the data and then we bring it back to our advisory group, many of whom are representatives of different nonprofits that live in and individuals who live in the community, and also residents who said, yes, I don't mind sitting around planning all day. And now that we're into implementation, we're seeing more energy. So I'll say, I don't want to take too much more time, but just want to say it's a wonderful community. And I would say, besides Leadership Tomorrow, I'm working with the Rainier Beach, gosh, I'm trying to remember the title, back to the Rainier Beach Empowerment Coalition back about 11 or 14 years ago. Right out of college, I bought a house off of Cloverdale and rehabbed that. So I always have had a love for the Rainier Beach area community. So I'm glad to be back and hear what you all are doing. So thank you for your partnership. Thank you.
Matthews, a shout out to the Life Enrichment Group. She's also youth development staunch stakeholder in this neighborhood. So we're at the hour. Just want to thank you. We do have some food that we want you to take advantage of. Also, the Kings and Queens dedication is underway just down the street in Rainier Beach. And we also have some literature on the table, some information about RBAC and its new self. Also, Rainier Beach, a beautiful safe place, the neighborhood and youth engagement initiative, and also our cornered reader activity. So make sure you want to take some literature. And just want to thank University of Washington again. At the top, you heard me mention, got a kind of a 2-pronged kind of focus. One is to kind of help coordinate the youth gaze at our neighborhood, and this is just kind of a effort there, but also sustainability, making sure that the research they do is something that we as a neighborhood can continue. So we want to thank you again. Thank everybody for coming. Enjoy the day. And I'd like to get the students back up here for a picture with our board chair, if you don't mind. So thanks again.